She wrote a book about grief. She went on television to promote it. She sat across from a local Utah news anchor, and she talked about losing her husband unexpectedly. She talked about how hard it had been for her sons. She described the challenges of navigating grief as a family. She cried. The anchor cried with her. The viewers at home felt her pain, because she was a grieving widow, a mother of 3, a woman who had turned tragedy into something beautiful, a children's book to help other families cope with the unbearable weight of sudden loss. Her name was Kouri Richins. The book was called Are You With Me? And on May 13th, 2026, on what would have been her husband Eric's 44th birthday, a judge in Park City, Utah sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole for murdering him. Not just once, twice. She tried to kill him on Valentine's Day. She failed. And then, 17 days later, she tried again. This time she succeeded. This is the story of how Kouri Richins got caught. What happened in that courtroom yesterday? What happens now to 3 little boys who have lost both parents in the space of 4 years? And the question that this case forces every person who hears it to ask, how do you grieve a man you killed? To understand how Kouri Richins got caught, you need to understand who she was trying to become. Kouri and Eric Richins lived in Francis, Utah, a small tight-knit community just outside Park City, in the kind of landscape that looks like a postcard. Mountains, clean air, a place where people know their neighbors. They had 3 sons together. By all outward appearances, they were the picture of a Utah family. But underneath that picture, the marriage had been corroding for years. Prosecutors would later reveal that Kouri had been having an affair, that she had fallen in love with another man, that she wanted out of the marriage but not out of the life that came with it. Eric Richins was not a wealthy man by any extraordinary measure, but he had life insurance. He had assets. He had the kind of financial security that Kouri wanted to keep without keeping the husband. She did not ask for a divorce. She did not tell Eric the truth. Instead, she started asking questions. Prosecutors presented evidence that Kouri Richins had asked 2 separate people for what she called the Michael Jackson drug. Think about that for a moment. She did not ask a pharmacist. She did not search online in a way that could be traced. She used a nickname, the Michael Jackson drug, the sedative propofol that killed the pop star in 2009. Except what she ultimately acquired was not propofol, it was fentanyl, one of the most potent synthetic opioids on earth. A drug so lethal that a dose the size of a few grains of salt can stop a human heart. She acquired it illegally. She brought it into her home. And she waited for the right moment. The first moment came on Valentine's Day 2022, February 14th. The day married couples celebrate love. Kouri Richins gave her husband a sandwich. Eric ate it. He became seriously ill. He survived. For 17 days, Kouri Richins watched her husband recover from whatever had made him sick. And she did not call a doctor to ask what happened. She did not go to police. She did not confess to anyone. She waited, and then she tried again. On the night of March 4th, 2022, Kouri told police she made Eric a Moscow Mule. A cocktail, vodka and ginger beer. She brought it to him in bed. He drank it. She said she put one of their sons to bed. She said she fell asleep. She said she woke up and found him unresponsive. Eric Richins was 39 years old. He was pronounced dead. The autopsy found fentanyl in his blood at 5 times the lethal dose. 5 times. Not an accidental overdose, not a tragic error. 5 times the amount needed to kill a grown man. In a drink his wife had made him. On a night she just happened to fall asleep before checking on him. Here is where the case begins to unravel. Here is where Kouri Richins' performance, which was extraordinary in its audacity, started to develop cracks so large that even the people closest to her could not look away. The first crack, the insurance policy. Before Eric died, Kouri had taken out a $100,000 life insurance policy on her husband. She had forged his signature to do it. He did not know the policy existed. Within days of his death, she filed a claim. Crack. The children's book. Rather than disappearing quietly into widowhood, Kouri Richins did something that the investigators and the prosecutors, and eventually the jury, found breathtaking in its boldness. She wrote a book. Are You With Me? Was a children's picture book about coping with grief after the sudden loss of a parent. It was presented as something she had created to help her sons process the loss of their father. She self-published it. She promoted it. She went on local television. She gave interviews. She presented herself to the world as a grieving mother who had turned pain into purpose. And while she was doing all of that, investigators were quietly building a case that would end everything. The third crack, the searches. When investigators examined Kouri Richins' digital footprint, her phone, her computer, her search history, they found a pattern that told a completely different story to the grieving widow on television. Searches about fentanyl, searches about lethal doses, searches about how quickly it would take effect. A woman grieving her husband does not search for how much fentanyl kills a person. The fourth crack, the witnesses. Two people came forward. Two people confirmed that Kouri Richins had asked them, separately, for the Michael Jackson drug. She had been looking for this before Eric died, before the Moscow Mule, before the Valentine's Day sandwich. She had been planning this. In May 2023, 14 months after Eric Richins died, Kouri Richins was arrested. She was at a book signing event, promoting Are You With Me? The book she wrote about the grief of losing her husband, the husband she had poisoned. The trial began in February 2026 in Park City, Utah. It lasted 3 weeks, 13 days of testimony. The prosecution built their case around 4 pillars. The fentanyl, 5 times the lethal dose, in a drink she made for him, in a bed she left him in. The Valentine's Day attempt, establishing that this was not a single impulsive act, but a deliberate, repeated effort to end her husband's life. The insurance fraud, a forged signature on a policy she took out without his knowledge, a claim filed within days of his death. And the affair, a motive as old as murder itself. She wanted someone else, she wanted the money, and she wanted Eric Richins out of the way. The defense tried to paint Eric as a drug user. They argued he had a history with marijuana gummies. They suggested he may have obtained the fentanyl himself. They implied the death could have been accidental. They called no witnesses. Kouri Richins did not take the stand. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. 3 hours for a case built on years of evidence, weeks of testimony, and a children's book written by the woman who killed the man it was supposedly for. They found her guilty on every count. Aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, 2 counts of insurance fraud, forgery, every single count. Unanimous. When the verdict was read, Kouri Richins looked at her defense attorney. She raised her eyebrows, as if she was surprised. May 13, 2026, Eric Richins' 44th birthday. The sentencing was not scheduled on this date by accident. His family chose it because he could not be there, and they wanted his absence to be felt in every corner of that courtroom. The victim impact statements lasted hours. Eric's father, Gene Richins, stood up. He described his son as an incredible father. He said Eric coached his boys' soccer team. He said after Eric died, the team still breaks the huddle the same way. 1, 2, 3, Eric. His sister, Katie Richins Benson, looked directly at Kouri and said, "Today is Eric's birthday. I stand before you because he cannot." She asked the judge not to leave Eric's sons wondering whether Kouri might track them down in the future. She said, "There is nothing Kouri will not do and no one she will not hurt to achieve her own selfish ends." And then, statements from the 3 boys were read aloud, not by the boys themselves, by therapists. Because Eric and Kouri's own sons, the children she wrote the book for, said they would fear for their safety if their mother were ever released from prison. Her own children. Afraid of her. Kouri Richins then addressed the court. She spoke for nearly 30 minutes. She spoke directly to her boys because she said she had not been able to contact them since May 2024, when custody was transferred to Eric's sister Katie and her husband Clint. She said, "As much as you've been influenced into thinking that I'm a murderer, that I took your dad from you, that is completely wrong. That is an absolute lie." She said, "I will not be blamed for something I did not do." She said, "I'm coming home." And then Judge Richard Mrazek spoke. He noted that he had a choice. 25 years to life, with the possibility of parole, or life without parole, permanent. He said he had considered the impact on the children. He said that was the hardest part. And then he said something that this case had been building towards since the night of March 4th, 2022. He said, "A person convicted of committing that sequence of acts, in that way, and for that reason, and who causes the absolute tragedy that has befallen Eric Richins' sons and family, a person convicted of those things is simply too dangerous to ever be free. Life without parole, the maximum sentence." Kouri Richins shot a look at her defense attorney. She raised her eyebrows. The judge set no fines, all lesser counts to run consecutively. She is 36 years old. She will die in prison. And now the question that nobody in that courtroom could fully answer. What happens to the 3 boys? They are young. They have lost their father to murder. They have lost their mother to prison. They are now living with their aunt and uncle, Eric's sister Katie and her husband Clint, who are raising them alongside their own children. They wrote statements saying they fear their mother's release. Those statements were read by therapists because the boys themselves could not stand in court and say those words out loud. Kouri Richins said from the podium that she has not been able to reach her son since custody was transferred in May 2024. She said she has sent letters, cards, messages. She asked them to ask Katie and Clint for whatever she has sent. She said, "The one thing I need you boys to know is I did not abandon you. She said she will do whatever it takes for them to hear what she calls the truth. She said she is coming home. She is not coming home. Those three boys are growing up in the long shadow of what happened in a bedroom in Francis, Utah on the night of March 4th, 2022. They will grow up knowing their father was poisoned. They will grow up knowing their mother did it. They will grow up having to decide, at some point in their own time, what to do with all of that. Whether to believe the jury, whether to believe their mother's letters, whether to open those cards she sent or leave them sealed. Nobody can make that choice for them. Nobody can protect them from the weight of it. Eric Richins' family is trying. They are raising his sons. They are keeping his name alive. The soccer team still breaks the huddle. 1, 2, 3, Eric. That is what a man's life becomes when everything else is taken from him. A countdown. Before a game, set by children who loved him. Here is the question I want to leave you with. Not a legal question. Not a question about the sentence or the appeal that Kouri Richins' defense team has already announced. A human question. Kouri Richins sat in that courtroom for hours listening to the family of the man she killed describe what his death had done to them. She listened to his father talk about the soccer team. She listened to his sister say she stands there because he cannot. She listened to statements from her own sons, written words, read by strangers, saying they are afraid of her. And then she stood up and said it was all a lie, that she did not do it, that she is coming home. You can read that two ways. The first way, a woman so deep in denial that even a unanimous jury verdict, even her own children's fear, cannot penetrate the story she has built around herself. The second way, a woman who genuinely, in some internal architecture that most of us cannot access, believes what she is saying, who has constructed a version of events so complete and so protected that the entire justice system of the state of Utah has not been able to break through it. I do not know which one is true. I do not think we will ever know, because the only other person who knows exactly what happened in that bedroom on the night of March 4th, 2022 is Eric Richins, and he is not here. Drop your answer in the comments. Do you believe Kouri Richins will ever tell the truth? Do you believe she knows what the truth is? And what do you think happens when those three boys are old enough to read everything for themselves? Those are the questions this case leaves behind, and they do not have clean answers. If you are new to this channel, we are here every week for stories like this one. The ones that refuse to resolve. The ones where the verdict is clear, but the human wreckage keeps asking questions. Subscribe. And if you want to understand how this story began, watch our first Kouri Richins video on this channel. The link is right here, because this is not just an ending. It is also a beginning. For three boys who still have their whole lives ahead of them.